It's the story of a bet so large it could have sunk the company, but instead, it built a $4 trillion empire on software nobody wanted. Imagine spending over a decade and $10 billion on a project that, for years, the world completely ignored. For NVIDIA, that wasn't a nightmare. It was a master plan to dominate the future, a future that almost never came.
Welcome to today's Why They Won.
Yuki, when you think of NVIDIA today, what comes to mind?
AI, trillions of dollars, and their CEO, Jensen Huang's iconic black leather jacket. They are, without a doubt, the company that is powering the entire artificial intelligence revolution. It feels like they came out of nowhere to become one of the most valuable companies on Earth.
That's what's so fascinating. It wasn't an overnight success. Their current dominance, their $4.1 trillion valuation, is the result of a single colossal bet they made almost 2 decades ago. A bet that, for the first 10 years, looked like a spectacular failure.
A decade-long failure? That sounds expensive. In Silicon Valley, you're lucky if you get a decade-long lifespan. What was this bet?
It was a software platform called CUDA. And to understand the sheer audacity of it, we have to go back to the early 2000s. NVIDIA at the time was a successful company, but their business was simple. They made graphics processing units, or GPUs, for one main purpose. Yuki, when you think of NVIDIA today, what comes to mind?
AI, trillions of dollars, and their CEO, Jensen Huang's iconic black leather jacket. They are, without a doubt, the company that is powering the entire artificial intelligence revolution. It feels like they came out of nowhere to become one of the most valuable companies on Earth.
That's what's so fascinating. It wasn't an overnight success. Their current dominance, their $4.1 trillion valuation, is the result of a single colossal bet they made almost 2 decades ago. A bet that, for the first 10 years, looked like a spectacular failure.
A decade-long failure? That sounds expensive. In Silicon Valley, you're lucky if you get a decade-long lifespan. What was this bet?
It was a software platform called CUDA. And to understand the sheer audacity of it, we have to go back to the early 2000s. NVIDIA at the time was a successful company, but their business was simple. They made graphics processing units, or GPUs, for one main purpose.
Making video games look amazing, right? I remember arguing with my friends about whether NVIDIA or ATI cards had better lighting effects in Half-Life 2.
Exactly. It was all about pixels, polygons, and frame rates. But inside the company, a few engineers and, crucially, CEO Jensen Huang saw something else. They realized their GPUs were basically super calculators. While a computer's main brain, the CPU, was great at doing 1 or 2 complex tasks at a time, their GPUs were designed to do thousands of simple tasks simultaneously.
Okay, I think I get it. A CPU is like a master chef, carefully preparing one gourmet dish. A GPU is like an army of line cooks, all chopping carrots at the same time.
That's a perfect analogy. And they thought, what if we could use that army of line cooks for things other than video games? Things like scientific research, weather modeling, or drug discovery. The problem was, programming a GPU to do anything other than graphics was, to put it mildly, a nightmare. It was a dark art known by only a few dozen people in the world.
So they had this incredibly powerful engine, but no one knew how to drive it, unless they wanted to play Doom 3. What was the big move they decided on?
This was the moment that defined the company. Around 2004, Jensen Huang made the call. They weren't just going to sell hardware anymore. They were going to build a software platform, a complete programming model and language that would make it easy for any developer to harness the power of their GPUs. This project was named CUDA, Compute Unified Device Architecture.
So they're deciding to build a whole new language, essentially. That sounds like a monumental task. What was the pushback like? I can't imagine the gaming division was thrilled.
The pushback was immense. Internally, people were screaming. Their main customers were gamers. Their investors understood the gaming market. And here was their CEO proposing to spend billions of dollars and divert their best engineers to build a software platform for a market that didn't exist. They were literally building a key for a lock that no one had invented yet.
That is terrifying. It's like building a giant, beautiful airport in the middle of the desert and just hoping someone decides to invent airplanes and fly there. So, what were the early results? Did scientists immediately start buying GPUs?
Not at all. For years, it was a ghost town. They released the first version of CUDA in 2007. And for the next 5 or 6 years, crickets. The cost was astronomical. It's estimated they spent at least $10 billion on R&D for CUDA and the related chip architecture over its first decade. Every single GPU they sold had to be more complex and more expensive to manufacture because it had to include this general purpose computing capability that almost none of their customers were using.
$10 billion. For some perspective, that's more than what it costs to build the world's tallest building, the Burj Khalifa. Nearly 7 times over. And for a feature nobody was using, the shareholders must have been losing their minds.
They were. And the environment was brutal. The industry thought NVIDIA was crazy. I remember seeing a popular comment on a tech forum around 2010. It was something like, "Why is NVIDIA wasting money on this CUDA nonsense? Just give me 5 more frames per second in crisis." That post was shared thousands of times. It perfectly captured the public sentiment. They were a hardware company, and here they were pouring their soul into software.
I can just feel the pressure, a decade of ridicule, burning billions of dollars for what must have felt like a science project. Was there a moment where they almost gave up?
Jensen Huang has said in interviews that there was never a moment they considered giving up, which is either incredible foresight or incredible stubbornness. He was completely convinced that one day a problem would come along that was so computationally massive that it could only be solved with their parallel processing architecture. He just didn't know what that problem would be.
So what was it? What was the moment the world finally found the lock for NVIDIA's key?
It started as a trickle and then became a flood. Around 2012, a new field of computer science started to gain traction: modern artificial intelligence, specifically deep learning. AI researchers discovered that the math used to train neural networks was exactly the kind of simple, massively parallel problem that NVIDIA's GPUs were perfect for. Training an AI model on a traditional CPU could take months. With CUDA and a GPU, it could take days or even hours.
The army of carrot-chopping line cooks. They were perfect for training AI. It was the problem Jensen was waiting for.
It was the ultimate I told you so moment. Suddenly, every AI researcher at Google, Facebook, and every university on the planet needed NVIDIA GPUs. And not just any GPU, they needed NVIDIA GPUs because of CUDA. Their competitors like AMD had powerful hardware, but they didn't have the decade of software development, the libraries, and the developer ecosystem that NVIDIA had painstakingly built. They hadn't just built a key, they had spent 10 years teaching the world how to be locksmiths.
Wow. So the consequence of that bet wasn't just that they sold more chips, it was that they created a moat around their business that was a decade wide and $10 billion deep.
Exactly. The compounding effect was staggering. More researchers using CUDA meant more AI applications were built on CUDA. This created more demand for NVIDIA GPUs, which generated more revenue for NVIDIA to pour back into making CUDA and their chips even better. It created a virtuous cycle, a feedback loop that locked everyone into their ecosystem. When the generative AI boom kicked off in 2022, NVIDIA was the only company on Earth ready to supply the hardware. They had a 100% monopoly on the tools needed to build the future.
So that's how a gaming company becomes a $4 trillion AI kingpin. Not just by building a faster horse, but by inventing the entire concept of the automobile and building all the roads and gas stations, too.
That's it. They sold the world a pickaxe during a gold rush they had engineered.
Looking forward, can anyone even challenge them? What does the future look like for NVIDIA? It seems like they have an unassailable lead.
That's the multi-trillion-dollar question. Their lead is enormous, but not permanent. Competitors are coming, and they're coming from all sides. AMD is getting much more serious with its own software, ROCm. Big tech companies like Google, Amazon, and Microsoft are all designing their own custom AI chips to reduce their dependency on NVIDIA. They are NVIDIA's biggest customers, but also potentially their biggest future rivals.
It's the classic innovator's dilemma in reverse. NVIDIA's customers are so dependent on them that they're now incentivized to spend billions to find an alternative.
Precisely. And NVIDIA knows this. Their strategy is to run faster than everyone else. They're on a relentless one-year product cycle now, announcing new, more powerful chips before their rivals can even catch up to the last generation. They are also expanding heavily into software and networking, trying to sell entire AI data center systems, not just chips.
They're trying to recreate the CUDA moat, but on a much grander scale. So the bet isn't over. It's just getting bigger.
The bet is continuous. Jensen Huang's philosophy is that the company is always 30 days from going out of business. That paranoia, born from nearly failing in the past and from making lonely, decade-long bets, is what keeps them ahead. For now, they are still the undisputed winners. That's it for today's Why They Won. We covered how NVIDIA's incredibly risky decade-long bet on the CUDA platform transformed them from a niche gaming company into the foundational pillar of the AI revolution.
If you like today's episode, hit that like and subscribe button, and we will bring you more big tech stories.
Leo, and let us know. Do you think that tech giants like Google and Amazon will succeed in building their own chips to challenge NVIDIA's dominance?